The yellow notice flapping on my ranch gate was impossible to miss, its bold letters screaming about violations and fines for non-compliant structures on what the HOA claimed was their land. I stood there, morning breeze tugging at the paper, and couldn't help but let out a dry chuckle. These folks had no clue who they were messing with. This wasn't some suburban lot with a picky homeowners association breathing down my neck. This was my land, every inch of it, and they just stepped into a fight they couldn't win. My name's Jack Harper, and I've been working this 412-acre spread for nearly 30 years. It started as weekend escapes to my granddad's old ranch, but when I inherited the place, it became home. Rolling hills, sprawling pastures, and thick forest land my family's held since the 1940s. Granddad ran cattle, and while I never went full-time into livestock, I kept the place alive, fixing fences, tending the barn, honoring the old ways. Trouble brewed about 5 years back when developers started VYing up the countryside. Where wild fields and deer trails once stretched, bulldozers churned out cookie-cutter subby VY signs with names like Willow Creek Estates. I watched from my porch as ancient oaks fell and backhoes clawed out foundations. They called it progress. I called it tragedy. At first, I kept to myself. The developers stayed off my property, and I stayed off theirs. The new neighbors seemed to sentwa VYing as they drove by, some even stopping to admire the weathered barn or ask about the land's history. I figured we'd get along fine. Then the HOA got involved. It started small, folks walking trails that cut straight through my back pasture. Families with dogs, joggers, cyclists all treating my land like a public park. Then came the gardens. Neat rows of tomatoes and flowers sprouted along my eastern fence. I thought it was a mix-up about property lines. One morning, I approached a woman tending her plot. She looked at me like I was the trespasser, saying the HOA had designated this as community farmland for a small fee. I told her, polite as could be, that this was my land. She laughed, saying the HOA wouldn't make such a dumb mistake. I let slide. The gardens weren't hurting anything, and part of me liked seeing the land used. Maybe I could work out a deal with the HOA, something fair for everyone. Big mistake. These weren't folks who saw compromise as an option. They saw it as weakness. The first official contact came on thick, fancy letterhead from the Willow Creek HOA. The tone made my blood boil. They claimed my barn restoration and new fence posts violated their rules, calling my work unauthorized construction on community land. I was to stop immediately, remove my non-compliant structures, and submit plans for approval or face DULOC 200 daily fines plus legal fees. I read that letter 3 times, each pass stoking my anger. They genuinely believed they owned my family's land. This wasn't a mix-up. It was arrogance on a level I'd never seen. I called the number on the letterhead, hoping to clear things up. The woman on the phone was polite but unyielding, scheduling me for the next HOA board meeting to present my case. She told me to bring documentation, as if I needed to prove I owned land my family had held for 80 years. I gathered the deed, old surveys, tax records, everything, and had my lawyer double-check it. He confirmed what I knew. I owned every square foot, plus a buffer that stretched into areas the HOA was claiming. At the meeting, I walked into the Willow Creek Community Center with a folder of proof and what I thought was reasonable hope. The place was sterile beige walls, beige carpet, beige everything. 20 residents sat in folding chairs, facing 5 board members who acted like they ruled the world. The president, Karen Whitmore, had a polished smile that set my teeth on edge. I stood, introduced myself, and started explaining the mix-up, holding up my documents. Karen cut me off mid-sentence, saying the board had re-VYEU'd my claims and found them baseless. Their research, she said, showed the land was a common area designated by the developers. My barn and fences were illegal, and if I didn't comply, they'd sue. I tried to show the deed, but she waved it away without a glance. The other board members nodded like puppets, and some residents clapped. I was sidelined for the rest of the meeting, listening to talk of pool maintenance while holding proof of my ownership. When I tried to speak again, Karen had security ready to escort me out. The fine started a week later, DULOC 200 a day for the barn, Do Law 200 for the fences, Do Law 200 for not submitting plans. In 10 days, they claimed I owed Do Law 6,000. I tossed the invoices in the trash and kept working on my barn. If they wanted to fight, I'd give them one. First, I dug into their claims. At the county courthouse, I pored over records and maps. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. The HOA wasn't just trespassing, they were profiting. They charged fees for garden plots, trail access, even MOVYE nights on my land. The developers had told them the open space was theirs, but they'd never owned it. My granddad's original purchase included 67 extra acres, covering the HOA's gardens, trails, and even their entrance sign. A survey error from the 1980s had gone uncorrected, and I owned it all: mineral rights, water rights, timber rights. I had the county surveyor walk the lines with GPS. Every inch the HOA claimed was mine. My lawyer drafted a cease and desist letter, clear and brutal, demanding they stop all active VY ties, remove their gardens, and account for every penny they'd made off my land. We sent it to Karen, the board, and their management company. Their response? A letter dismissing my claims as frivolous, accusing me of forging documents and upping the fines to Do Law 14,000, threatening a lien. That was it. I told my lawyer to file everything. Within a week, every gardener got an EVY tie-in notice. The HOA got a lawsuit for trespass, conversion, and unjust enrichment. The management company was named as a co-conspirator. The reaction was chaos. Karen left voicemails demanding I call her. Board members whined about innocent families hurt by my actions. I didn't call back. Instead, I spent the weekend putting up a real fenced all, solid, with no trespassing signs every 100 feet. It blocked the trails, gardens, and a shortcut residents used. Suddenly, folks who'd roamed my land for years were locked out. The HOA held an emergency meeting, painting me as a VY lane, stealing community land. Karen promised their lawyers would fix it, but their legal team was crumbling. My records were ironclad. 3 weeks later, a new HOA lawyer called, all politeness, admitting confusion about boundaries and offering a deal. I agreed to meet, but on my terms at my kitchen table. Karen and 3 board members showed up, their confidence gone. They offered Do Law 15,000 plus Do Law 2,000 yearly for an easement to keep the gardens and trails. I shut it down. They wanted to legitimize years of theft for pennies, ignoring the harassment they dished out. I demanded they remove all structures, refund all fees with interest, and publicly apologize. Karen tried to argue, but her lawyer silenced her. They left defeated. Residents started knocking. Mrs. Lee, an elderly widow, begged to keep her herb garden, tears in her eyes. A young couple, the Wilsons, pleaded for trail access for their toddlers' walks. A veteran, Mike Torres, offered to buy an easement for his birdwatching group. Each story hit hard, but I couldn't budge. Exceptions would weaken my stance, and invite more conflict. The HOA's bullying had poisoned everything. The toughest was Riverside Elementary, whose 3rd graders used my trails for nature walks. The principal, Emily Carter, showed me photos of kids marveling at salamanders and oaks places I'd loved as a kid. She offered liability coverage and payment for access. I promised to think it over, but the memory of Karen's sneer kept me firm. Compromise now would validate their tactics. The county launched an investigation into the survey errors, exposing the HOA's management company for profiting off unowned land. Other landowners found similar issues, sparking lawsuits. The developers faced fraud claims for advertising amenities they didn't control. Property values in Willow Creek tanked, and a local paper ran a story on HOA overreach, quoting legal experts who called my case a wake-up call. I got letters from across the country, folks facing their own HOA battles. Critics called me cruel, saying I should have compromised. They missed the point. This wasn't about gardens or trails. It was about a group thinking they could bully me off my own land. I turned the reclaimed land into something better. I built an animal sanctuary: horses, goats, pigs, chickens, all rescued from neglect. Volunteers flocked to help, many with their own HOA horror stories. I planted a VY near where the gardens had been, the work healing after months of stress. The sanctuary in VY near drew VY sighters for tours, spreading word about animal welfare and sustainable farming. My land became a real community hub, unlike the HOA's sterile amenities. 6 months after that first notice, the HOA settled, paying my legal fees and admitting they had no claim to my land. Karen was ousted as president, and 2 board members quit. Residents struggled to sell homes without the trails and gardens they'd advertised. I banned all HOA business from my Propertino board members. No reps, nothing. Then Karen herself showed up, no longer president, asking to bring her grandkids to see the sanctuary. I let them in. The kids loved the horses, and Karen quietly apologized. I accepted it, but kept the ban. The final twist came during a drought. The HOA's landscaping withered while my land stayed green, thanks to natural springs. They begged to tap my creek. I said no. Those water rights were mine, just like the land they tried to steal. Their brown lawn stood as a reminder of what happens when you choose control over respect. Now, my sanctuary thrives, kids laugh during tours, and my VY Neards grapes ripen under the sun. On their side of the fence, dead shrubs tell the story of arrogance. Justice doesn't get sweeter than that. What do you think? Was I right to hold the line, or should I have compromised for the community's sake? Could the HOA have handled this differently to avoid losing everything? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button if you're Team Jack, and subscribe for more stories where the little guy fights back.